Hey everybody, how's it going? Matthew Kadish here, author of the Earthman Jack Space Saga, available over on Amazon.com. And today we are going to be talking about one of our favorite topics here on the channel, where we analyze lots of movie, TV, and entertainment news, and that is Disney and some interesting business things that have been going on with the Disney-Fox merger. Now, just a quick background for those of you who might not be familiar with this. Basically, Disney decided to acquire 20th Century Fox in a huge takeover deal where basically they bought out all of Fox's properties except for the Fox Broadcasting Network, which is the actual Fox channel that you see on TV, and Fox's news and sports properties. So basically, Fox spun off their channel along with Fox News and Fox Sports and a few other things into a different business, and Disney gobbled up all the rest in a massive $52 billion merger, which basically means Disney paid $52 billion to acquire all of 20th Century Fox's assets, other than the network and the news and stuff like that. And that was basically just because of antitrust issues that they were dealing with. Because Disney already owns ABC, they weren't allowed to own the Fox network since it was another major broadcaster. And that was one of the reasons why they didn't get it. But with this merger, basically, Disney inherited all of Fox's upcoming film properties, which was films that were already made by Fox and were in the pipeline to be released into theaters and stuff like that. And so when Disney kind of took over Fox, these movies were already slated to be released. They already had their release windows set, and movies were done. They were ready to go. And so, it was basically business as normal on the movie release front, except instead of the revenue going to 20th Century Fox, that revenue was now going to Disney. And something interesting happened here that it's probably not very... it's probably not making Disney very happy. And that is that all the Fox movies that have been released in 2019 have been, well, for lack of a better word, flops. And Disney is pretty unhappy with the slate of films that have been coming out of their Fox properties. And so this is an article over at Variety written by Rebecca Rubin and Brent Lang. And it basically details, the issue that Disney is facing with all of Fox's film properties. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of this article, and then we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it, because there was an earnings call that Disney CEO Bob Iger recently made that kind of details their strategy going forward and what we can expect for the rest of 2019 in terms of Fox properties. Is Disney having buyer's remorse? The studio would be forgiven if it were having some regrets about absorbing 20th Century Fox, the company that once generated big box office with the likes of Avatar, Life of Pi, and Bohemian Rhapsody. Disney's not having buyer's remorse, but they're probably not happy with the previous administration over at 20th Century Fox for greenlighting so many duds that just happened to coincide with the timing of their takeover. Because let's face it, Fox has some amazing franchises. Not only did Disney inherit the Avatar franchise and stuff like Predator, Aliens, Die Hard, major franchises through acquiring Disney, they also finally got the outstanding rights to the original trilogy Star Wars stuff that Fox was holding on to. So it was a good purchase for Disney. After Dark Phoenix bombed earlier this summer, Kumail Nanjiani, sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation, and Dave Bautista's action comedy Stuber did little to instill more confidence in the film slate that Fox handed Disney as part of its $71.3 billion merger. 71, I thought it was $52 billion. My mistake, $71 billion, that's even worse. So far, the Magic Kingdom has struggled when it comes to distributing movies that don't fall under the studio's squeaky clean umbrella. They've already taken 2 hits on 2 films out the gate, said Jeff Bach, a media analyst at Exhibitor Relations. They're like horses at the Santa Anita. They're just dying on them. To be fair, the faith-based drama Breakthrough did a respectable $50.4 million globally on a $14 million budget, but that kind of modest performance is hardly going to justify one of the splashiest purchases in Hollywood history. And I believe Breakthrough was a Fox Searchlight picture. Fox Searchlight is kind of like the award bait, or like the more indie-based productions on that 20th Century Fox had. So I don't know if you could really count that among the bigger flops like Stuber and Dark Phoenix. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When the historic takeover was first announced, Disney's looming presence over the box office was expected to grow even stronger. Fox's film empire meant Disney would have the keys to Marvel's X-Men Mutants, James Cameron's Avatar sequels, and Fox Searchlight's awards fair. Fast forward through the first 6 months of the year, and Disney has been jettisoning off a handful of duds. X-Men spin-off Dark Phoenix, savaged by critics, ran out of steam with $250 million globally, a terrible result for a movie that cost $200 million to produce and millions more in marketing and distribution fees. More worrisome is the fact that its bloodless performance signals that the mutant franchise could be nearing the end of the line. Cue the inevitable reboot. Well, yeah, I mean, one of the big advantages of doing the Fox takeover deal was that Fox had the license to a number of Marvel properties, which included Fantastic Four and X-Men. And so one of the attractive things about acquiring Fox was to bring those licenses back under the Marvel banner. And they were never going to continue with what Fox had already started. You know, they've been making X-Men movies since, the year 2000, so like almost 20 years now. And so with that, Disney, there was no way that Disney wasn't going to reboot the X-Men. So I feel like with Dark Phoenix kind of set to come out, Disney might not have pushed it as much as it probably should have been pushed. But at the same time, they were basically going to end this incarnation of the X-Men anyway. So this shouldn't even be a question. This is just a duh moment. Stuber was also given the brush off by moviegoers who have, by and large, been giving comedies the cold shoulder. They haven't been giving comedies the cold shoulder. They're giving stupid-looking comedies the cold shoulder. I mean, let's face it. What's his name? This Indian guy. I'm very sorry. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He is not a movie star. He's not someone who's a big draw. Like, yeah, he's on Silicon Valley, and he had one indie film success. I think it was a romantic comedy, but I don't even remember the name of it. And he's a talented guy, don't get me wrong. I think he's very funny, but he's not a movie star, and he's not enough to carry his own film. And Dave Bautista, he's pretty good as well, but he's not The Rock. He doesn't have the kind of star power to carry a movie. So Stuber was never really going to set the box office on fire to begin with. Its $8 million domestic debut is a dismal figure in the throes of the summer, and the situation isn't likely to improve once The Lion King, Fast and Furious, and Hobbs and Shaw hits theaters. That's another thing. Stuber should not have been released over the summer. It's a fall movie at best, or possibly in the holidays. I don't know why they decided to release it over the summer. Maybe they thought Bautista, with his star power, could kind of carry it. But it was foolish to release it in the summer because people want to see big action movies in the summer. They don't want to see these kind of like goofy small comedies. That's more fall fare. Of course, Disney had little to do with producing this crop of losers. Marketing executives can only do so much to spin audiences on movies that simply aren't very good. Moreover, Disney is doing just fine when it comes to box office revenues. The studio commands almost 35% of the market, more than double the next closest rivals in Universal and Warner Brothers. The top grossing movies of 2019, Avengers Endgame, Captain Marvel, Toy Story 4, and Aladdin, all hail from Disney's empire. But Fox isn't offering much in the way of support, and Disney would be casting a shadow over the theatrical landscape, even if Robert Murdoch hadn't decided to play Let's Make a Deal with Bob Iger. So I'm not going to go through this entire article, but I will link it to the description if you guys want to kind of dive into this. They kind of talk a little bit about what Disney has on the slate in terms of like the Fox films. Ad Astra is coming out, Ford versus Ferrari. The Avatar sequels, Steven Spielberg's retelling of West Side Story, which I don't know who's going to want to see that. I mean, West Side Story, it's classic, but if you've seen the musical, you've pretty much seen the movie. So I don't know what the appeal is going to be with that, but what do I know? But I want to get to this next thing because there are actually three things that I want to talk about in this video. And that is that on a recent investors call, we kind of got a little bit more details on just how bad Dark Phoenix did and what exactly Disney wants to do moving forward. And this is over at CBR.com. Disney singles out Dark Phoenix as major contributor in quarterly losses. So after the Fox merger, basically, Disney took a hit in terms of revenue, and a big part of that was X-Men Dark Phoenix. Disney is looking to reevaluate its Fox properties after X-Men Dark Phoenix resulted in a major third quarter loss for the company. Disney Chief Executive Officer Bob Iger said today in a quarterly earnings call that the final X-Men film inherited from Fox partly led the loss. Dark Phoenix, which is being retitled X-Men Dark Phoenix, I don't know why it wasn't titled that to begin with, ahead of its home release, was dubbed one of the year's biggest box office flops. The film made for a staggering $200 million and only pulled in $65.7 million at the domestic box office. Ouch. That's not a good showing. Most of its box office actually came from international markets, with the worldwide total coming in at $252 million, still a far cry from what needed to be considered profitable. Now, guys, this is a very important line here. Most of its box office actually came from international markets. Keep in mind that international markets are becoming more and more important in Hollywood in order to get these really expensive movies to turn a profit. Territories like China, in particular, are a big consideration when American studios are making movies. And you're seeing this a lot with the streaming platforms too, and their original content, where they're trying to make stuff that will appeal to a worldwide audience, and that means diversity casting and actors of different races and nationalities and stuff like that being included in things like this. And so that was just a quick note I wanted to point out, is that studios are becoming more and more cognizant of how important the international markets are. And so that's kind of one of the big driving factors in their decisions going forward in terms of like what they're choosing to make. It was revealed earlier today that the studio posted a $170 million operating loss in its fiscal third quarter. Ouch, $170 million loss. That's not good. Because of this, the studio will now be axing a majority of the previously announced Fox slate and refocusing output. The studio will move forward with Ford versus Ferrari, which it has already begun marketing. It'll also turn its focus towards James Cameron Avatar sequels, which are now in production, as well as more Planet of the Apes films. So basically, Disney sat down, they looked at all the movies that Fox still had slated to release this year. They must think that Ford versus Ferrari is a good movie because they're moving forward with that. And in terms of development, James Cameron's Avatar sequels and more Planet of the Apes films are definitely on the slate. But chances are we're not going to ever get to see New Mutants, which was on the slate to be released this year. It got pushed back a number of times. And after the failure of Dark Phoenix, Disney basically is just going to be writing off all of Fox's mutant fare, and we're never going to get to see what that movie is. It's going to be just lost to time probably, unless they ever decide to release it on video or on one of their streaming platforms. But that looks unlikely. They may repurpose it and put it out on Hulu in a couple years. I mean, who's to say? But the fact that Marvel is going to be rebooting the X-Men franchise anyway, chances are New Mutants isn't going to fit in with that. And so Disney's probably just going to stick it in a vault somewhere and let it linger there for the rest of eternity. Of course, Dark Phoenix isn't necessarily the only Fox property to have failed this year. Releases such as Stuber and The Kid Who Would Be King didn't perform too well, both selling around $30 million worldwide. Dark Phoenix, however, is the most notable of the three releases, giving its massive budget and being part of an established cinematic universe. One thing is for certain, that Dark Phoenix's poor performance at the theatrical release of New Mutants now seems unlikely, which is what I was just saying. So that's basically how Disney's going to handle the rest of the Fox films on the slate for now. We're going to see Ford versus Ferrari sometime this year, but all the other Fox movies look like they're going to be shelved. Now, that's on the movie front. This was just released a day or two ago about what Disney plans to do with other Fox properties in terms of their streaming service, Disney+. So even though the movies might have been kind of a bomb, They're moving forward with the development of Fox's big franchises, and they're taking some of the more family-friendly franchises that Fox owns and getting ready to gear them up for their streaming service. So this comes from Collider, and it says, Home Alone, Night at the Museum, Wimpy Kid reboots coming to Disney+. This was again announced during the earnings call for investors. Robert Iger announced that the studio is developing reboots and reimaginings of family-friendly hits such as Home Alone, Night at the Museum, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and Cheaper by the Dozen for its forthcoming streaming service, Disney+. Elsewhere, Iger said that Disney plans to continue Fox's acclaimed Planet of the Apes franchise, and that Fox Searchlight will be making movies for Disney+, though Disney will pare back the total number of releases from Fox's film divisions. Of course, Fox has Brad Pitt's epic space opera Ad Astra and James Mangold's racing drama Ford vs. Ferrari on the immediate horizon, while its 2020 releases include the Amy Adams thriller The Woman in the Window, which I've heard is a mess right now, and so that they're in the middle of reshoots, so Disney can't be happy about that either. And Steven Spielberg's musical West Side Story, not to mention James Cameron's Avatar sequel. So we got West Side Story. I don't know how good that's going to do. We might see a repeat of the BFG in terms of Spielberg, where he just makes a movie that nobody cares about and nobody wants to see. Not to mention Avatar sequels, which I hope these come out eventually, because James Cameron's taking his sweet time getting those out. As far as these development projects go, the only one I've heard rumblings about is the reimagining of Home Alone, which could turn the tables and follow a husband and wife who go to war with a young boy who has stolen something from them, rather than the original premise of a young boy who goes to war with a pair of inept thieves looking to rob his house. Word on the street is that Borat scribe Dan Mazer is the top choice to direct, and Melissa McCarthy is being eyed to star, but it sounds like everything is still up in the air, and the studio hasn't settled on a direction just yet. Besides, it'll come down to who is cast as the boy at the center of the story, and the truth is that there just aren't a ton of Macaulay Culkin-level talents running around Hollywood these days. Though I was certainly impressed by Julia Butler's breakout turn as Leonardo DiCaprio's precocious young co-star in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is true, she was very good. The first Home Alone is one of my favorites, blah, blah, blah. The other properties on the docket make sense for Disney Plus as the streaming service sets out to make a name for itself. The Night at the Museum franchise grossed nearly $1.5 billion worldwide, while the Wimpy Kid movies took in nearly $300 million worldwide, so each child-friendly property has a strong fan base that, in theory, would follow those titles to Disney's new streaming service. Even the two Cheaper by the Dozen movies grossed over $300 million, and I could see Disney assembling a young, fun, diverse cast for that film, diverse cast, depending on how the studio chooses to reimagine the title. And you can bet your butt it's going to be a diverse cast because, again, remember, Disney wants that international market. They want that worldwide audience. And so the more diverse their casting for these things are, the more it's going to appeal to that international audience. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Cheaper by the Dozen with a multi-ethnic family. The Home Alone thing, they haven't quite settled on direction quite yet. There's talk that the kid's going to be a girl, and it's not going to be Kevin McAllister. It's going to be something else. And there's even been talk about having Kevin McAllister be a grown-up parent and having it to do with his kid. So that's all up in the air right now. But it looks like even though Fox's film slate has cost Disney some expensive lessons, all of their franchises look to be set to be developed into something that's going to make Disney a ton of money. All these family-friendly projects that are coming to Disney Plus are going to feed into Disney's over-the-top service and subscriber base, and that's going to be pure profit for them. And you just know that the Avatar sequels are going to be huge. You know that a lot of these movies are probably going to do well. I'm not so sure about West Side Story, even though it's a Steven Spielberg film. Woman in the Window, if they can get their act together and actually clean up that film and reshoots, that's another possible win. I'm not sure how big of the buzz Ford versus Ferrari is. I mean, the biggest thing there is just the actors, Matt Damon and Christian Bale. But I don't really see a whole lot of buzz about it. It might be good for an Oscar bait type thing where, they put it up for some awards. Ad Astra looks interesting, but it's not exactly a high concept film, so it's probably not going to tear up the box office. So yeah, the Fox film slate doesn't look too good, but the repurposing of all their franchise looks to be where Disney is headed with this. Anyway, guys, what do you think about Disney's strategy with Fox? Do you think it was a mistake for Disney to acquire Fox? Do you think that Disney's strategy going forward of scrapping the rest of the film slate is a good one and focusing just on the streaming media and future franchises? Let me know what you think in the comments, and please subscribe to my channel for all movie, TV, and entertainment related news and analysis. This is Matthew Kadish, and I will catch you in the next video.